Hey, yo, Fro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, if you're sick and tired of dropping $60 to $100 every year on the latest, greatest wrestling video game, stop doing that. Go over to Facebook and play Wrestler Unstoppable, totally free. Create your own wrestler, customize them, join companies, sign contracts, headline pay-per-views, even create your own corporation. Everything you could hope for in the world of professional wrestling, absolutely free at Wrestler Unstoppable through Facebook today. While you're at it, if you want to become a member of the Fro Wrestling Podcast Patreon family, go to patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast and contribute today. And for the month of November, all $25 contributors will host an episode of Going Live with me on one of our live episodes, and all of our $10 subscribers will have their names entered into a chance to win an opportunity to host an episode as well. So check that out today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Fro Wrestling Podcast, coming to you from Zern's Farmers Market in Gilbertsville, Pennsylvania, where the Worldwide Wrestling Alliance action is underway. This is already a great show. We had a beautiful tribute to the troops. Today is Veterans Day, and we had a conglomerate of veterans from all the different branches of the military here to take part in a very special ceremony to kick off the show, a beautiful rendition of the national anthem. It was really a great sight to see, and something very special that Worldwide Wrestling Alliance puts out there. They firmly are in support of our nation's troops, and it's a beautiful thing. We are going to cover all the news and rumors in the world of pro wrestling while we're at the show tonight. If you have any questions or comments or things you want us to address in a future episode, by all means, go online, shoot your questions through the Spreaker app to us, or go to the Fro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160 to get your questions into us for a future episode today. So, while we're here, we have got so much action going on. We've got Jack Molson will be in the ring later tonight in a strap match, no disqualification, falls count anywhere against Blitzkrieg. That is the main event. It should be a great match. Jack Molson is a longtime veteran of the Northeast independent wrestling scene and somebody who really has a following here at both the Zern's Farmers Market and the Quakertown Farmers Market. If you are in the area, by all means, get to the show. Check out the show live. This is a great opportunity to see local independent wrestling at its best. These guys do a great job. And let's face it, many of them have not had the opportunity to get the exposure of a television deal or contracts with some of the big organizations, but that does not take away from the passion that they show in the ring. These guys do a great job, and it's something you should all definitely check out. You're really missing out if you're not seeing independent wrestling from both the Worldwide Wrestling Alliance, Susquehanna Wrestling Organization, Excellence Pro Wrestling, and a whole host of others that are all over the country that do this kind of show where you get to see some local talents that you probably haven't seen anywhere else, but they are putting on some really fantastic matches. So if you get an opportunity, shoot over to one of those shows sometime. It's really, really worth your time and energy. So we're going to get started with some of the news for the day. I mean, there's so much stuff that's been going on in the world of pro wrestling lately. We're going to start with Madison Rayne. A few weeks ago, there was news that Madison Rayne was going to be at the WWE Performance Center, hoping to secure a spot on the NXT roster. And now Madison Rayne is now scheduled to appear for Ring of Honor. So apparently something didn't work out at the Performance Center. She's now in the Ring of Honor parent company. She's going to be competing with the Women of Honor, and it's a return for her. She's a former Ring of Honor talent years ago, prior to her experience in Impact Wrestling, where she was a stalwart of the Knockouts division, a former Knockouts champion, and really just a fantastic female wrestler all around. And it will be wonderful to see her in the ring again. She's been out of the ring for quite some time, and we haven't had the opportunity to really see a lot of Madison Rayne for quite a while. Impact Wrestling had her on their booking committee for a substantial period of time and didn't have her in the ring, and she would have been something that would have bolstered Knockouts division. Kind of confusing to me why they didn't have her out there in a more prominent role. And a surprise to me is the fact that they let her go, knowing that she is seeing Josh Matthews. Her real-life boyfriend is still one of the lead announcers for Impact Wrestling. There's been a lot of discussion this week about being the 20th anniversary of the Montreal Screwjob, where Bret the Hitman Hart refused to lose in Montreal and dropped the WWE Championship to Shawn Michaels before he heads to WCW. And even though we're 20 years later, there's a lot that still goes unresolved, despite the fact that Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart have kind of buried the hatchet and they've moved past that. There's still constant debate over how things were handled, how they could have been handled. And look, here's where it boils down to. Bret Hart has always insisted insisted that he would do the honorable thing, walk out on Monday Night Raw, and vacate the WWE Championship. Shawn Michaels came out this week and stated that the Montreal Screwjob was the worst he felt in his entire wrestling career. It was the worst night of his career. So those are some powerful statements. Bret Hart, I think, forgets sometimes when they discuss this topic that the Montreal Screwjob really wasn't about Bret losing in Montreal. It was about Bret Hart not wanting to drop the championship in the fashion that they wanted him to drop it. There had been a great buildup in their feud. Things were moving in a great direction, and then because of the contract situation with WCW and Bret Hart leaving the company, there was no great resolution to the feud. So things had to get a little more strange, a little more out of control, and the feud did not get the right blow-off that it deserved. Instead, Bret Hart got the schmaz ending. He was put into the sharpshooter by Shawn Michaels. The referee called for the bell. Now, I've heard people over the years say, why did Vince McMahon have to do it with the sharpshooter? Couldn't Shawn Michaels have put him into something else? Now, Bret Hart, if you remember at the time, started using that turnbuckle figure 4 and other things of that nature. It would have been very easy for Bret Hart to put on a figure 4 in the ring and have Shawn Michaels reverse that, to do the respectful thing to Bret Hart and not have him lose using his finishing hold. I know that's been a stickling point in the past. I think for Bret Hart, I think he would have appreciated Vince McMahon flat out telling him, listen, you're going to lose this match. He didn't, from my understanding, have full creative input into the scenario. I know he had some creative freedom, but it boils down to this. He has creative freedom in doing whatever they ask him to do in the match, but he has no creative freedom whether Vince McMahon walks out and strips him of his championship. If Vince McMahon understood the reality of wrestling and how intelligent fans were back then, and in much ways, fans are even more intelligent now, he may have been able to handle the whole thing a whole lot differently. Look, it was not going to be a secret that Bret Hart was going to WCW. So if Vince McMahon would have embraced that on television, let Bret Hart know, listen, we're going to strip you of the title. So it's not about a creative thing. We're taking the belt off you before the show. Put Shawn Michaels out there with somebody else who is still a contracted talent. Have Bret Hart run an injury angle. Bret Hart has no consideration in that. You're not asking him to go out and lose a match. You could have had an angle at the pay-per-view where Bret Hart was not going to be able to make it. Somebody jumped him in the back, and have Owen Hart step in and face Shawn Michaels for the championship, if that's what you have to do. There's so many other ways it could have been handled than the way it was. However, I will tell you this. WWE has profited from the Monday Night Wars and profited from the Montreal Screwjob for 20 years. They've done Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels' greatest rivalries DVDs. They've done conversations on various wrestling shows. They've had Q&A sessions that have drawn huge dollars to view them. And in the end, the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels Montreal Screwjob became probably one of the longest running and most successful angles of all time, despite whether it was a work or a shoot. There's people who still debate that, whether it was Bret Hart doing a work and it took all these years before it was finally resolved. I don't buy that. I think it was a straight-up shoot. I think that all the conjecture in the back and in the locker room, Bret Hart hitting Vince McMahon, the Harris brothers protecting Shawn Michaels and Triple H in the back, and all these other stories you hear about the Montreal Screwjob, I think all those, in my opinion, validate that it was a complete shoot. But again, one that didn't have to happen. And 20 years later, hopefully now, professional wrestling has evolved to the point where we understand there are smart marks, and that if something strange happens, hopefully wrestlers are not getting as much creative control in their contracts anymore, because that's where things become a problem. The phrase, the inmates run the asylum, that's the truth in the world of professional wrestling in the late 90s. Everybody had creative control, and everybody could pull off whatever angle they wanted because they could just dictate what their characters did. And the Montreal Screwjob could have been a whole lot different if that wasn't the case. I'm going to move on to what does WWE do now with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. For those who don't know, on the previous podcast episode, we broke the news that Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens were sent home from the United Kingdom tour based on the fact that they went into business for themselves at the SmackDown taping and did not follow the prescribed ending to the Sami Zayn versus Kofi Kingston match. Zayn and Owens were supposed to charge into the ring and get beat down by the New Day, helping to validate the New Day as legitimate competition for the eventual Survivor Series match that will take place between the New Day and the Shield. And let's face it, right now, the New Day are a tag team who couldn't wrestle the tag team championships away from the Usos in their blow-off match, and now you're supposed to believe that the three of them could beat the Shield, Roman Reigns, who can't lose to anybody, and Dean and Seth, who have to be beaten by a brogue kick out of nowhere with the New Day are clearly out of the arena. I still don't understand the finish on Monday night, but at the end of the day, what we need to know is what's going to happen with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens going forward. And it's a tough situation. They are two marquee names to just let them go. I don't think WWE would serve their own audience by letting them go. At the same time, you got to be careful not to reward their going into business behavior. Many wrestlers have sounded off on Twitter and other platforms about how going into business for yourself is absolutely unacceptable in the pro wrestling world. But at the end of the day, they did that. And I think they did that because they know how big of names they are, how big of draws they are, and they probably understand that Vince McMahon may punish them in some way, but he's certainly not going to end their contracts over it. Speaking of contracts, the big announcement this week was that Lucha Underground is now officially on for Season 4. Season 4 should be taped sometime early next year. Who knows how long those episodes will take to make it to television. You know, in the past, those episodes took over a year for Season 3 to make it to television. So we'll have to see how Lucha Underground handles that. But at this time, it is great news for Lucha Underground fans that Lucha Underground will be having a Season 4. That's great news for the people who enjoy the style of product that they put on. It's fantastic. In other news this week, James Storm, following up on a previous report that we had, James Storm apparently has finished with Impact Wrestling at the tapings this week, losing a Loser Leaves Impact Wrestling match to a member of America's Top Team. He is done with the company. He will be free to be a free agent sometime in the neighborhood of January after these set of tapings air and whatnot. And he has been very upfront that there is something new on the horizon. And right away, the speculation is, will he be headed to NXT, or can he be brought to the main roster immediately at WWE and be paired up with Bobby Roode, Beer Money reunited, obviously under a different moniker, but that the fans would really pop to see that combination back together. I'm very excited to see what they do with this. James Storm is one of the most, in my opinion, underappreciated talents in the history of pro wrestling. This guy is insanely talented, held the Impact Wrestling Championship one time for a total of 8 days, and never really got his chance to run with the title the way he probably should. And it would be really nice to see him get a much bigger opportunity with World Wrestling Entertainment at a future time. Hopefully he makes that happen. And if not, look, there's other corporations out there that he could go to. He would be a great addition to Ring of Honor. He'd be a great addition to Lucha Underground, even to New Japan Pro Wrestling, helping them expand into North America. He's a huge name. It would immediately garner major attention. So definitely something to keep our eyes on in the near future. Also finishing up, potentially, there's a theory that James Ellsworth is done with WWE after losing so poorly in the United Kingdom tour. It looks like it's about 1 year since he signed his contract with World Wrestling Entertainment, and with Carmella super kicking him and breaking up that pairing, it sounds as though the James Ellsworth tenure with WWE may be over. We'll have to keep our eyes on that to see if that's the case. What a shame if it is. He would be an amazing addition to the 205 Live roster. I am hoping that they do renew his contract and put him on 205 Live. I think he'd be a great help to that brand because, let's face it, before the Carmella nonsense, he was actually over really big with the fans. People loved seeing him. So I think WWE has really dropped the ball pairing him with Carmella for such a long time. They really should have taken the time and invested the time in getting him out there as a member of the 205 roster. Imagine a matchup between James Ellsworth and Enzo over the Cruiserweight Championship. What a fantastic storyline those two could be involved in. Ellsworth, actually a fantastic wrestler. If you want to check him out, go onto YouTube. Look up James Ellsworth. Long before he was in World Wrestling Entertainment, he was a huge independent star, held championships. He was a member of tag team championship teams all over the American independent scene. So check out that stuff on YouTube and really acclimate yourself to his past accomplishments. He's been a great asset in the past for other companies, so it'd be really nice to see him get a better opportunity in World Wrestling Entertainment. Moving on, War Games. It's right around the corner. NXT TakeOver is the predecessor to Survivor Series, or the precursor to Survivor Series taking place. And as we all know, the 3 teams War Games match that will take place at NXT TakeOver should be very exciting. But in regards to that, Dustin Rhodes, in his Dustin Rhodes persona, his normal persona without the Gold Dust moniker, should be seated right at ringside to watch an invention that his father came up with. What an incredibly awesome moment to see him when he comes out. It's definitely a situation where I feel like the NXT brand was so much influenced by Dusty Rhodes, and this is a way for them to kind of recognize his contributions using one of his creations back in the NWA and WCW, and allowing Dustin to be such a big part of the festivities. It'll be great to see how they handle that, but hopefully, I actually hope he gets involved in some way, even if it's not to specifically help any one person. If one of the teams come out and at ringside, get in his face, maybe get a little jaw jabbing or something going on, but it'll be nice to see them pay tribute to the American Dream in that way. Speaking of big news, there's discussion that Hulk Hogan's name was brought up to potentially make a return to World Wrestling Entertainment in the near future. That they've been discussing this internally to see if it's the right time to take a chance on bringing him back to the company, and hopefully they find a way to do that. I think the WWE Universe loves Hulk Hogan, always will, and he's a personality that really belongs on WWE programming. I understand everybody's human. He's made some bad mistakes in the past. Irreprehensible things have been said. But at the end of the day, he made mistakes. He's been very repentant about it. He has not rushed back into the wrestling business. He's taken time away and really seems like he's reflected on how things have gone. So there is definitely discussion to make that happen at some point. Obviously, it'd be more of an ambassador role, but it would be great to see him in any way, shape, or form at a WWE programmed event. It would be really fantastic. A former WWE talent is getting ready to make their Ring of Honor debut. Simon Gotch, now wrestling as Simon Grimm, has now signed on with Ring of Honor, should be debuting with the company in short order, and should be a main part of their roster. Hopefully, he gets some better opportunities than he did in WWE when he pretty much got buried. He and his tag team, the Vaudevillains, never getting any traction, never getting any kind of semblance of a real push. They were great in NXT, and they were really over with the fans, but somehow they botch most of these NXT call-ups. I don't understand how the creative geniuses in WWE who can create these characters in NXT can't foster them on the main roster. So hopefully Ring of Honor can find a way to maximize his talents and really bring him the prominence that he really deserves. He's a great wrestler. He's been all over Europe and the independent scene now since leaving WWE, and it'll be interesting to see how he's booked. The final topic for today is Chris Jericho. What is going on with his future now that we know he will challenge Kenny Omega for the IWGP United States Championship at Wrestle Kingdom 12, January 4th in the Tokyo Dome? It's huge news, but the real question is, where does he go after that? And what is totally shocking is the first thing we heard was that WWE was upset with him for doing this New Japan booking, but that is apparently not the case. And there are already plans in place. This is a one-off with New Japan Pro Wrestling that he would make a return to WWE in time for the Raw 25th anniversary show and potentially for an appearance at the Royal Rumble, possibly leading to something at WrestleMania. Chris Jericho is absolutely a legend in the professional wrestling business, and he deserves the opportunity to, have the schedule he wants, book the events he wants. I'm a big fan of his cruise, the Rock and Rager. Please check out the details on that. Go to, I think it's ChrisJerichoCruise.com, and you can see all the booking options. For $750, you can go on that cruise. What an awesome, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm actually hoping it's a resounding success, and he could do future cruise events like that going forward, because I think it's a great opportunity to get a really unique presentation. And now that he's partnering with Ring of Honor, it's something hopefully that they can bring back year in and year out. It would be a very unique concept, but one that I think could really work with the wrestling fans. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode where we run down all the latest wrestling news and rumors. Special thanks as always out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all of our music and sound effects we use throughout the show. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to www.frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the page. And to alleyrepair.com, contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. Be sure to shoot over to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs. That means college, university, or just additional training for that next step in your career. Fro Life Educational Planning can help you with that, because Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro, and I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us tonight. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.sportsjunkies101.com for the latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. Until next time, everybody take care and have a great night.